what are some just applicable consistent habits as an aspiring high school athlete or even younger or collegiate athlete that is being implemented at Alabama on a daily basis that I could attach to and grab and start implementing those habits right away to better prepare myself as a young athlete to potentially play college sports?
hmm Yeah, consistent habits. That's what you're asking. Like, what are those
Yeah.
things? I think just first of all, being where you're supposed to be at, on time, and doing that every single day in all the different areas, going to class, okay, turning in all your work on time. And what happens is you get these wins, right? And then you start doing extra, and the champions really, they do extra. They don't just do their job, they do it at an extremely high level. And so, how do you get to that point? You just start doing the things that everyone does, okay, and is expected. You do it, but you do it every day because not everyone else at some point does it every day. And then you raise the level, you raise the tangents and the other things you add to it. You're doing extra stretching, you're doing extra, you're putting extra into your nutrition, you're getting extra sleep, you're doing those things. Like those things all add up. It helps you have a well-rounded lifestyle about you to where there's not distractions, and you can focus on really what these guys are passionate about. And fortunately and unfortunately, their identity really a lot of it surrounds the game of football right now, and that's okay for at some point, but we also want to get to the point where these guys have something beyond the identity of football, because that's going to end, and life's going to continue on. And it's always going to be a part of their past, but there's got to be more to it and understanding who they truly are. But I think a lot of those things in building the small wins and then doing even more. But it just starts with simple nutrition, eating right. What's that? Well, you got to figure out, what that looks like for you. Not missing, not, making every workout, finishing every workout, getting to class on time, turning in all your homework. It's all those things that really, just are expected, but doing it over and over and over again.
Yeah, no, and I feel like a lot of the times when you start talking to highly successful people, it's almost like, man, these people are lying to me because it's so simple. Like what they're explaining is so simple, but like you said, it's stacking habits, consistency, day by day, and you do it over a long enough period, it's going to add up and you're going to get the results you're looking for. And I think sometimes it's almost easier to communicate to people, in your opinion, kind of take away what adds up to wins and success and high level achievements. What's the opposite side of the spectrum of that? Because I think sometimes it's easier to kind of digest what could are athletes doing in high school or in college or at any level that could be detrimental, that are simple fixes just as easy as on the success side of things.
Yeah, I think just opposite, like what we talked about before, who you're surrounding yourself with, who you hanging out with, and where's that leading you, and how is that all of a sudden, is someone who doesn't have the same priorities, the same wants and goals, and all of a sudden, you're not getting that sleep at night, right? Which means that you're a little bit more groggy, and now that leads to not getting your homework turned in, and just things keep stacking up. And I know this is a common thing that's said, but I really truly believe how you do anything is how you do everything. And so that's how our guys operate. And what you do some of the time is what you're going to do all the time, and it's what you're going to become, and it's who you're going to be. And so the people you hang out with, and just slacking or cutting corners. That one little corner you cut becomes, I can do that again and still got by with it. But at some point, it's going to catch up with you. It just stacks up in a wrong way, in a bad way over time.
Yeah. What are some, I mean, just like small, minute things from the outside looking in, maybe at I don't want to say an inferior program, but just another program that might look like a small detail, but is a standard at Alabama. And kind of context wise to kind of lead you away. I remember our time at Fresno State together. Coach Tedford did not play around about your shirt being untucked. Like that, that was something that drove him crazy. And as a player, I'm like, man, it's kind of a big deal, but it's really not a big deal, you know. But then you do see the one time in a game where it happens and a guy gets pulled down by his jersey because it's hanging out, then you kind of understand. But then it's not so much the shirt being out that's the issue, it's the principle of it. So, what are some of those things that are being applied at Alabama that are standards that are just the standards that will always be set?
Yeah, I mean, that one's right there. You know, the day I walked into this program, sat down with the leaders and asked them some of the things that were important to them. Literally, that was probably the first one. And it wasn't just on the football field, it's in the weight room. Shirts are tucked in, you know, and that's an easy thing to point to as far as like, are you bought into what we are trying to do as a team, as a program? Because, you know, it's pretty obvious when one guy doesn't look the same as the rest of them. And yes, your shirt might come untucked in a practice or a play, but you know, you guys know, and someone else should be calling you out, and that leads to the next level of accountability, where it's peer versus peer, player versus player. Hold each other accountable, and that's just one. But I think there's just another level of just our guys and their investment in all these things, from the sleep, getting to bed at a time to where they're getting the proper amount of sleep. Like, they truly are doing that. They are truly, like, weight wise, understanding what they're putting in their bodies and how that leads to them maximizing what they're capable of. That 1 or 2 pounds really matters, to these guys that are at the highest level, and producing at the highest level. And there's guys that can get the job done, that still maybe, aren't at the top of their game when it comes to those things, but they're figuring out, they're the ones that are going to cramp first in practice. They're the ones that are going to, have these areas that then sooner or later we address. And they kind of realize, you know what, I'm not my best until I do all these little things. So, I think every guy's a little bit different on what those things are from a program standpoint. We do have some of those things, like you said, with tucking the shirts in and things like that.
Yeah. I think it's interesting too, this whole, I mean, kind of first half of this conversation is we haven't even talked about one time as far as just getting recruited or being at the top of your game. Like, not once has speed, strength, or skill, or like none of those tangible things have popped up. So, I mean, just in your opinion, when you're going to recruit an athlete and you're showing up to a school or they're coming, stepping into your office, obviously they could play football at that point. What are some intangible traits that you're looking for in a player to say, we want you to come be a part of our locker room and add value to our team on and off the field?
Yeah, it's like, what are the conversations revolving around, and we need to understand, like, NIL is a part of the world, and that conversation needs to happen. But how much of it is dominating the conversation we're having? Is it the very first thing? Are we really trying to figure out, like, hey, this is a good fit personality wise? This is good fit, for all the things you're looking for, football related, socially, we talk about academics, athletics, socially, spiritually, all those things. And so, I think that's a lot of, where it starts. What's the conversation? Feel like I'm a pretty good reader of people, and, are they genuine, or are they just trying to get as many offers as they can, and, kind of have that hype around them. And then they really truly don't love football. They kind of love the recruiting process, but like, when it really comes to doing the work, is that really the case? And, for us, we want a culture, we want a building of people that love coming in the door and are going to stick around here as long as they can. I would say they got other things they got to do, but going to put more time in, because the more time we're around each other, the more things we're probably going to learn, the more film that's getting watched, whether it's individually or with a coach, or, just there's more good decisions that are getting made, and there's more things that are rubbing off. Sometimes you don't know what you don't know, and you just continue to learn, especially the young guys that come into our facility. But we want to have a place where they just feel good about wanting to be there. They're not worried about, who's gonna come after them for this or for that. But they're also got to do their part. They got to do their part to add to our culture, to unify, be a uniter, not a divider of our team. And a lot of that just goes back to who you are, how genuine you are, how much you love this journey you're on, how committed you are to the process and the discipline you have to it, and the actions that hopefully represent and support the goals that you and we all have.